Every Christian should know who Terah is, because had he followed God's calling, he would have been the father of our faith rather than Abraham. In Genesis chapter 11, verses 27 through 30, we see an account of the standing of Abraham's family, then called Abram. And in verse 31 we see, Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his granddaughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. In Genesis 12, verses 1 through 5, we see that God is making promises to Abraham should he be faithful and depart Haran to go to Canaan. In verse 5, he follows through. It says, he took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Notice how Terah had intended to set out for Canaan, and then in the very next chapter, we see that Abraham was told specifically by Yahweh to go to that same place. If we were reading this plot in the Hebrew, we would notice that there is no division of chapters and verses. So we'd immediately go from seeing how Terah died before even making it to the land of Canaan, and then go right to the next sentence where it begins talking about Abraham's calling to go to that exact same place. Although it never says in the Bible that Terah was called by God, both clearly had set out for the same place, and only one guy made it there. This is all interesting information because we know that Terah stopped halfway between Ur and his final destination, Canaan. And the word Terah, or the name Terah in Hebrew, means lagging behind, loitering, delaying, waiting, stopping, waiting place, or station. And the last three, to me, are extremely important. I'm sure people are already asking me, Max, why did Terah stop? Why didn't he keep going? Well, in Joshua chapter 24 and verse 2, I believe we are given the answer. And it says, Joshua, or Yehoshua, said to all the people, this is what the Lord, Yahweh, the Elohim, God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. You see, if we look up the geographical location of Haran, it is situated between the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. If you look at it with Canaan also on that same map, you will see that it is on the other side of the Euphrates River. So even for as long as Terah was in Haran, he was still worshiping these pagan deities. Take a look for yourself. You can see that geographically speaking, Haran was located beyond the Euphrates River in relation to Canaan. This lack of faithfulness on the part of Terah demonstrates a very important biblical principle. For many are called, but few are chosen. And the scriptures also show us that Yahweh never accepts half-hearted efforts. In Matthew 6:24, we see Yeshua saying, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And it appears as though Terah was attempting to serve these pagan deities and Yahweh at the same time. And in Acts 7, we see a timeline established for all these events, because Stephen is responding to accusations being made against him by the Sanhedrin. He says, brothers and fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran. Leave your country and your people, God said, and go to the land I will show you. So he left the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran. After the death of his father, God sent him to this land where you are now living. Two things here. Abraham and his father were both called in the same place, while they were both still residing in Ur. We can see this from what Stephen is saying. And secondly, Abraham waited until his father died in Haran to depart from that land. And perhaps recognizing Abraham's father's uselessness to Yahweh by trying to follow the world and the father at the same time, Yeshua says in Matthew 8, verses 21 through 22, to another disciple asking him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father," quote, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." Basically, leave them behind. It's interesting because in the book of Genesis, there isn't even an account of Abraham burying his father. Thank you to those of you who have made it this far. Now, I want to go through what I believe was the order of events to conclude this study. First, God seems to call Terah to leave Ur of the Chaldeans to go into Canaan, and I have references. Secondly, a calling to Abraham to leave seems to follow not long after, but God does not yet make known where he is going. We see this in the Acts account. Third, Terah takes his family out of Ur, but only makes it to Haran. This place may or may not have been named after the son he mourned. Then we see that it must have become apparent to Abram that his father had no intention of carrying on his journey to Canaan. Then we see that Abraham seems to get called for a second time based on the Genesis account. And finally, Abraham waits for his father to die and then finishes the assignment they were both given to go to Canaan. It appears as though Yahweh granted more favor to Abraham ultimately for abandoning the pagan worship tradition of his father. Be blessed.